Now to Capitol Hill, a new U.S. Labor Department proposal could change how you save for retirement. The agency wants to make it easier for 401k plans to add alternative investments, things like cryptocurrency, real estate, and private market assets. Supporters say that could give savers more diversification and possibly higher returns than traditional stocks and bonds. But some financial experts warn many 401k investors don't have the training to handle these complex investments, which can be riskier and more expensive.
Adding alternative assets like private equity, private credit, or crypto absolutely could help individual investors, but at what cost? The cost of getting higher returns, that's the help. The cost of getting those higher returns is going to be higher fees and higher risk. And the question then becomes, do we really want the ordinary worker saving for retirement to be bearing a lot more risk? I think the answer to that is probably no. There is room in our economy for alternative assets, absolutely. Is there room for it in the typical retirement account, which should be safe and stable and provide retirement funds for millions of Americans? I think that the answer is we should be cautious about that.
The proposal stems from an executive order by President Donald Trump directing regulators to expand access to these assets and 401ks. Even if the rule is finalized, experts expect adoption to be slow.